Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a new edition of the Daily Debate. In tonight's show, we're going to be focusing on the educational sector here in Egypt. This is within the framework of the continuous efforts the government has exerted and still is exerting in terms of developing the educational process here in Egypt. Now, 14 Egyptian universities have been listed in the Quacquarelli Simmons rankings for 2023. 14 Egyptian universities. Cairo University is actually among the top 50 in the world. And also Egypt, with the World Bank, is exerting a lot of efforts and financing for the development of the educational and health sector. We're going to be focusing on this file tonight. But before we start doing that, let's check out the main story making the news today. And we'll start off with President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who held 2 meetings to follow up the current and future projects for the development of dry and land ports nationwide. The meetings were attended by Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli, Minister of Finance Mohammed Maid, Minister of Transport Lieutenant General Kamel Wazir, Minister of Trade Ahmed Samir, and Major General Ahmed Al-Azazi, the head of the Engineering Authority of the Armed Forces. During the meeting, President el-Sisi was briefed on developments of the Saloum land port, which represents a lifeline in Western Egypt by facilitating travel and transportation to and from Libya. They reviewed means of enhancing the flow of goods and increasing the rates of trade exchange and benefiting from the logistics area that is being implemented within the port development to serve exporters. The meetings dealt with developing projects of the Great Port of Alexandria, especially in multi-purpose Tahya Misr terminal, which is capable of handling from 12 to 15 million tons of goods annually and receives 6 to 7 ships with cargoes. This is considered a valuable addition to the state's capabilities in this field. This is the main story making the news today, but now turning our attention to the educational process and sector here in Egypt. 14 Egyptian universities have made it in the top Quacquarelli Simmons rankings worldwide for 2023. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
Egypt has maintained its leading rankings among African countries in 2023 rankings for the best 1,500 universities worldwide. Out of 32 African universities, Egypt was ranked with 14 universities, according to the Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, Ayman Ashur, who also said that the American University in Cairo ranked 416. Cairo University 551 to 560, the Ain Shams University 801 to 1000, followed by 3 universities in the 1001 1200 category, while 8 universities came in 1201 to 1400 rankings. Ashur said that 13 Egyptian universities had been listed in 2023 QS rankings. The enlisted universities included Cairo University, the American University in Cairo, Ain Shams University, Alexandria University, Azhar University, Asyut University, Mansoura University, Zakazik University, Bani Suef, Helwan, Tanta, Suez Canal, and the Arab Academy for Science, Technology and Maritime Transport Universities. A spokesman for the Higher Education and Scientific Research Ministry, Aider Abdel Ghaffar, loaded the listing of the Egyptian universities in the global rankings, which is based on good academic reputation, academic research, and a number of international professors and foreign students, among others. Egypt has retained its position as the Arab region's second strongest higher education system after Saudi Arabia. This year's subject rankings offer data on the performance of 90 programs at 13 Egyptian universities. Among those programs, 22 improved, 17 declined, and 41 remained unchanged from last year's rankings. 10 programs were ranked for the first time. This year, Egypt boasts 16 entries in the 5 broad areas of studies. Tables of these 7 improved, 5 declined, and 4 remained unchanged year on year. Cairo University is Egypt's strongest institution by significant margin, with programs ranked in 27 subjects, more than double its closest domestic competitors, Ain Shams University and Alexandria University, with 13 each. Cairo University has the country's only top 50 subjects. Petroleum engineering ranked 40th in the world. Cairo University's newly ranked vet science program placed in the 51 to 70 band, the country's second highest ranking. Medicine marks a subject of significant improvement for Egypt. In terms of research quality and quantity, according to H-Index, another of the 5 performance indicators and a measure of a program's productivity and impact, 7 of the country's 10 most improved subjects in the metric are in medicine. Computer science at Cairo University was Egypt's most collaborative discipline in terms of another metric, the International Research Network Index. The Cairo University program conducts 45% of its research alongside cross-border collaborators, more than double the global average.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and we're joined here tonight in the studio to shed more light on the educational sector and process here in Egypt. We're joined by Dr. Nabil Ged, the educational expert. Dr. Ged, good evening, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good evening.
Dr. Ged, first of all, we're talking about the Egyptian universities and the Egyptian educational process, which has undergone a lot of development over the past few years, and quite recently 14 Egyptian universities have made it to the top 1,500 universities worldwide. Cairo University is actually among the top 50 out of 1,500 universities worldwide. So it is a landmark, and it's worth observing and exploring a little bit the amount of development the educational process has gone so far, and we still need to go a long way as well. So what makes Cairo universities one of the top 50 universities worldwide?
Well, as you said, first of all, before saying or answering your question and commenting, let me seize the opportunity to congratulate all Egyptians for the blessed month of Ramadan, wishing everybody very many happy returns.
Yes.
Back to your question. This greeting is a must, actually. Unless Cairo University has proved its identity as one of the top universities in Egypt and among the top 50 in the whole world, I think this is due to very hard, scientific, patient research work, not only for the idea of teaching the new generation, and it has its own history. It started as King Fuad University before the Egyptian Revolution, and now it's called Cairo University. As a matter of fact, one feels very proud to have this. And this accreditation was not given haphazardly. I mean that there are some very important and convincing reasons for the QS association or society to grant Cairo University such accreditation. And that makes us not to stop. This is not the end of the matter, but we have to go on. To reach the top is easy. However, to keep on the top is the most difficult task one can ever face.
Yes.
So unless all the people in charge, whether in Cairo University itself, concerning the teaching staff, or even the Ministry of Higher Education, and all the enforcement given to the people, encouraging them to be advancing and progressing, it would be something else. We don't like anybody or any university to deviate.
Yes.
What we have achieved is wonderful, but let us keep it up all the way.
Yes.
Without this, I think the picture will not be the same.
Yes.
And we will keep our fingers crossed for
Yes,
them.
definitely. Well, Dr. Ged, I mean, academically, Egyptians have always been actually pioneering, especially within the university years and the university education. Many of our scholars and many of our graduates take up leading positions, whether in Egypt or even abroad. And that has been the case for many, many years, and that's why we have very prominent figures internationally as well, involved in different parts of the world. How can we still stay on top with all the developments, with all the changes the educational process is undergoing? I mean, we can only just look at the past 5 years, and there has been a huge change in the educational process in all stages, not just the university ones.
It's inexplicable that to continue the university path, it goes along with the scientific research.
Yes.
And that's why the Ministry of Higher Education is called the Ministry of Higher Education, and scientific research,
Yes.
I think. So the scientific research is a must. Let us think of those who are promoted in the university staff, from administrator to an assistant teacher, to a teacher, to an assistant professor, to a professor.
Yes.
These steps do not go easily, but one has to exert all efforts day and night to achieve what he is aiming or targeting at. The scientific research and supervision by the professors on their graduate students or postgraduate students, this actually gives the push. Since we are not living in isolation from the whole world, we should always take a step forward. We don't be static and be in corner number one, as we usually say.
Yes.
We have to think, work hard, sincere, and consult others. I heard recently in another program like that about twinning of universities with universities abroad. And now we have a sort of competition within Egypt. We have 27 governmental universities, about 20 non-governmental universities, newly aggregated, I think, last year. We have 10 or maybe more private universities. We have high institutes for different topics. And this sort of competition should always meet the labor market needs. If we prepare our students who graduate for this hope, or and we inspire them, motivate them, not necessarily financially, but we can inspire them and give them incentives to motivate them, push them forward all the time. I think there is a budget for such things, and we shouldn't be misers
Yes.
on giving these rewards to the scholars and researchers on all fields.
Yes. Well, the President actually yesterday, he mentioned and he instructed within the Ministry of Higher Education that certain universities should allocate certain scholarships for special and distinguished students in Upper Egypt to actually make sure everybody gets a good and fair opportunity and a good crack at the educational process. But you're a veteran in the educational process and you've been teaching and instructing for decades, be it in Egypt or abroad, and you spoke about the competitiveness. Now, there are two kinds of competitiveness. If it's a domestic competitiveness between our governmental and non-governmental and private universities, and there's also the competition from abroad, looking at other countries, at other universities abroad. In terms of, let's first speak about competition abroad. Which educational process would you look at and say, well, we've got a competition there, we need to either collaborate or try and edge them out? What sort of an experience that we should learn from over the past decades and recently in terms of the technological boom in the educational process?
Right. Really, we have to think deeper in such an important and essential issue. Education doesn't exist only in the university stage. We have to look at the buds flourishing and generating flowers in the future.
Yes.
And I'm so happy that you mentioned the distinguished character, Egyptian characters that hold lots of international positions, like in medicine, in physics, in geology. We all know about the distinguished character.
Yes.
I mean. So these people, unless they have found abroad, and maybe here, but they were not frustrated. They continued their path, having a lot of patience, and they achieved their goals by teamwork. That's what we are in bad need of these days. The methodology of education is different from the secondary stage, for instance.
Yes.
It's gone are the days when the teacher or instructor was just spoon feeding the learners.
Yes.
No, they have to do something. And there is something called the net and Google.
Yes.
And I'm happy to tell you a very short story about a relative, a close relative of mine whose daughter, I'm considered a grandfather for her, about 9 years old, in grade 3. And she wrote a subject in Arabic about transportation since the beginning of the world till now, starting from the camel and the animals till the jet planes nowadays, and even sky rockets.
Yes.
And when I asked her, how did you get all this information? Did you have it in your books? No, Grandpa, this was through Google. I Googled it.
Yeah.
And I really wondered and admired her. This is the path which we should encourage our students to be. If young buds, as I call them, is having this path, let's concentrate on the university students to have not only to be lecture taking notes, but to be active members, having, for instance, in the classes I used to teach, there are teamworks, pair work, individual work. If they have a project, and the project is they collaborate together, cooperate together, as for instance the Faculty of Engineering. The project for graduation is not only for one person.
Yes.
Lots of his colleagues, a teamwork. So the teamwork, and this is what the late Dr. Zoel mentioned, that when he finished one of his days of work, he put the reports in the drawer and he locked it. The following day they asked him, why did you lock it? Why don't you leave it open for a desk drawer, for others to continue on what you say. If you have any emergency and you can't show up, so the others could come and continue what you say.
Yes.
So it's a link. It's teamwork, as you kindly mentioned it.
Yes. Well, we will talk about the grassroots of education and primary and secondary education in a little bit. But you've mentioned also the competitiveness, if we're talking domestically, among Egyptian universities, for instance, and academies and institutions. Now, the development, I mean, the students will only be maybe as good as, or at least they will start off as good as their professors. So it's about the development of the teachers, the professors, the assistant professors. So it's not just developing certain infrastructure or schools, but also it's a continuous upgrading and training of the educators themselves. How far do you feel we have come in terms of developing not just our curricula or infrastructure, but also our professors?
And the methods they use.
And the methods of them.
Exactly. I think there is something called the GOT, OGT, I'm sorry, on-job training. So, you know, physicians, for instance, unless they update themselves every now and then of the latest development in medicine, they will be static, as I mentioned earlier. Unless engineers, we nearly live now in the age of telecommunications, in the age of digitalization. Factories have robotization. Every single company nowadays has computerized everything in its work. So unless we benefit from the up-to-date and even sophisticated methods, we will be lagging behind. We'll be lagging behind. And this lag will affect the production later on. We should have a plan. Or what some people used to calling it the roadmap. If we have a good vision, and I think we have started to have this good vision for the people in charge nowadays, whether ministers or assistants or deputy or even university presidents, deans of faculties, deputy deans, all these people who work as team can have fruitful results for sure. And to involve their students in them. Not to be domineering characters, but to have, to share, because we say one hand cannot clap. So they should be clapping together.
Well, Dr. Ged, quite recently, over the past few years, Egypt has inaugurated many new universities with new modern specializations, talking about information communication technology, digital education, electronics, artificial intelligence, all these things which seem to be, as you've mentioned, they are requirements now for the new workforce and the new age the world is living in. How soon can we say, well, now we are pioneering, or at least we have a significant footprint within such new specializations in Egypt?
Well, to have dreams and mounting up on wings of these dreams is something good. We have to encourage it. As I mentioned earlier tonight, it's not to be static. We have to go forward. Some people are so traditional, and they call themselves backward ever, forward never. No, we should reverse this theory. We should look forward to having what's up to date and what's going on in the whole world. Technology field in particular changes and develops, let me tell you, not every hour, but maybe every second. Even the cell phone we have today is advancing, and every now and then there is updating things with skyrocketing prices, as you know. However, the financial disability, let me call it, could not be hindering us. We should work, I repeat it 3 times, regardless of the other factors that may affect us. If we feel frustrated, we will be disappointed. But disappointment cannot go on.
Yes.
We should always be hopeful. And where there is hope, there is life.
Yes.
Scientific life, I mean.
Yes.
And where is life, there is hope.
Yes.
That's one of the Egyptian celebrities said, I think, maybe the late Mustafa Kemal.
Yes. Well, I mean, when you talk about financial difficulties, I mean, apart from the economic difficulties the whole world is facing, the process of developing the educational system also needs a lot of financing.
Sure.
Now, you can't just depend on the government doing all the work in terms of at least financing. I mean, yes, we do have many governmental universities, including Cairo University, among the top 50 in the world, but also there is a role by the private sector to play in the educational process.
Sure.
We understand that private investors may open up a school or start a university with some sort of a twinning or a collaboration with other foreign universities. But what would you want to see the private sector do more in terms of helping out in the development of the educational process?
Well, recently I read that the private sector is participating and sharing effectively and actively nowadays. And I read recently about Mountain View Company, that they are building some schools, financing them. I think Abu Anin establishment. I think so many others, they came off my mind now. But the private sectors are very important actually to give a good hand forward to these universities. It's not only the government who is responsible for the development and progress in the educational field. Not only the high education, but even the normal education before and even for the postgraduate. We do hear about scholarships that come from abroad.
Yes.
And let us remember in this respect that in Egypt, Azhar University gives scholarships to Asian, African students who come here. So we have the same thing. Aside from having good relationship with the other Asian or African countries, when we have scholarships from other universities abroad, and so many of our graduates of the Egyptian universities traveled abroad, spending 3-4 years, and they benefited a lot, and they came back to benefit their country. I really do appreciate those who come back, because sometimes there are lots of temptations abroad. But if we are sincere to our country, it's the only one who we have in front of us as our beloved homeland. Homeland is so sweet, and nobody knows this unless he or she travels abroad and feels the feeling of homesickness. So when you come back, you will at least feel self-satisfied, and you will be appreciated. If not here on earth, it will be on heaven.
Yes, definitely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, working on the development of the educational system, the financing of it, Egypt and the World Bank have agreed a $7 billion tranche to develop the health and educational sectors here in Egypt. Let's check out this report and we'll be right back.
The World Bank has approved a new $7 billion collaboration agreement with Egypt for the years 2023-2027, which will put an emphasis on increasing private sector employment, improving health and education services, and climate change adaptation. According to a release from the World Bank, the country partnership agreement will involve $2 billion over 5 years from the International Financial Corporation and $1 billion annually from the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. For the country partnership agreement, the World Bank stated in a statement that it aims to improve Egypt's resilience to shocks through strength macroeconomic management as well as climate change adaptation and mitigation measures. It also aims to support creation of more and better private sector jobs and support better health and education services. Egypt has prioritized education reform in 21st century and allocated billions of pounds to renovate education system through many investment projects and plans to improve quality of education as well as services being offered throughout different stages. There are also some issues that the Ministry of Education is dealing with, including attempting to shift from a highly centralized system to one that gives individual institutions more autonomy, thereby increasing accountability. All levels of education are provided almost free of charge in all government-run schools. Egypt's dedication to a thorough, viable and cooperative method of ensuring quality education for all and developing a knowledge economy is reflected in its National Strategic Plan for Pre-University Education Reform. Access and participation, teachers, teaching methods, syllabus and learning assessment, textbooks and study guides, management and governance and a performance improvement strategy are all important components. The National Center of Curricular Development, the National Center for Education Research and the National Center for Examinations and Educational Evaluation all help the Ministry of Education make decisions about education system development in order to improve math, science and technology teaching standards. Local educators also participate in international professional development programs. Egypt's higher education system is extensive. Approximately 30% of Egyptians in the relevant age group attend university. Only half of them, however, complete their education. The Ministry of Higher Education oversees education. There are also several universities that cater to students in a variety of fields. There are many public and private universities and higher education institutions as well as technical institutes in Egypt. Education infrastructure, equipment and human resources aim to meet the growing demand for higher education. The Ministry of Higher Education and Scientific Research witnessed many distinguished achievements in various sectors during 2022 in light of directives of President Fattah al-Sisi regarding development and modernization of higher education system, raising service performance and keeping up with the global development.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, continuing our discussion with Dr. Ged. Now, sir, Egypt agreed with the World Bank $7 billion for the development of the educational and health sectors here in Egypt over the next 5 years. And it's not just, we're not just talking about the universities, but also, as you've mentioned, the primary education and the secondary education and even post and pre and post primary and pre and post secondary. And it's about really reaching the mentality and changing the educational sort of culture, the academic educational culture of our students. How do we start developing? And I'm not talking about schools in Cairo or Alexandria or the big cities, but nationwide, in Upper Egypt, in everywhere. So, yeah. So how do we go about in the development of these institutions, these schools, not just spoon-feeding them, but teaching them how to research, how to think, how to develop their own mindset and mind skills?
The whole concept should be changed. I mean, it's a sort of awareness given to parents. And this is the mass media role in particular.
Yes.
If we are having lots of TV series and some nonsense, I'm afraid to say that this, we have to insert the awareness factor in the parents' minds to help them in the far and remote areas, and not only in Cairo, as you have just mentioned, and not only in the capital cities of the different 27 governorates. it's the role also for educating the new generation. It's not the role of the teacher only. It's the role of the parents, the mosque, the church, the club, the school, and the university. We have to teach them some valuable ethics, like honesty, for instance. If I am allowed to give you a story I heard recently, that a mother checked her backpack of her child coming back from school, and she found a couple of ball pens. She said, "You have only one. Where did you get this from?" And he told, "Mom, I found it in the schoolyard." I say, "It's not yours. Tomorrow, I'd like you to go back, and during the morning gathering, tell the teacher in charge to announce whose pen, somebody has lost a pen yesterday. Whose pen is that?" So this is how a mother or parents in general cooperate with the school. Another story I heard about, actually, I had it personally. And I seized the opportunity also to give some propaganda about Egypt. I was in Britain many years ago. And before the weekend, I went to one of the supermarkets. I bought some items, and the cashier mistakenly pressed only one item instead of two. So when I came back, I reviewed the receipt, and I found only one. So I went back the following day, and I saw the staff working, the people in charge there, and I said, "Mom, yesterday I came and I did so and so." He said, "Could you please come with me to the manager of the store?" I went, and he told me, "Never in my life have I seen a customer coming back to pay." So I seized the opportunity, as I said, and said, "I'm Egyptian. And in Egypt, we are taught not to get anything without paying it." So see how the propaganda could this be. So if we teach our young kids the element of honesty, respecting the others, and discussing things, being patient, and checking and consulting the others, I mean their parents in general, or the teacher, or whoever is responsible for such a job. This will give a good push. Education is not only the syllabus, as you mentioned earlier. It's also, or it's not also the building.
Yes.
It's the logistics in general, and the educational elements and values we have to emphasize and focus on. It's the role of everybody, starting from the media.
Yes, definitely. Well, Dr. Ged, I mean, when you talk about the sort of honesty of the educational process, and it's not just the schools or the universities or the institutions, but it really starts with the family. It's changing or developing a mentality of the parenthood and the family. And this also works or falls under the educational or vocational education, not just for teachers or students, but also the workers working in a factory, teaching them certain things. How do you instill this sort of sense of honesty and responsibility towards not just your paycheck, but also your family, or the street you live in, or the city you live in, or
cleanliness of the city itself, or at home, as it has happened.
So does that mean that you need to not just focus on the education in terms of schools, but also education of a whole society?
We all remember that the Ministry of Education was in the past named in Arabic Tarbiya wa Ta'lim, and they said Tarbiya, which means bringing up the children before the word of education itself, or learning. And this is a must, that all people who could be helping their children cooperate together, consult. I think there is, I don't know whether it's still going on or not, the PTA, Parent Teachers Association, at the schools.
Yes.
This should be revived and be effectively going on, because the cooperation between the parents and the teachers or the school will help them a lot. I'm so pleased, extremely pleased, when I heard about the $7 billion paid for developing education in Egypt. I hope such a grant could be given also to health,
Yes.
which is advancing and progressing now. The national insurance covering, I think, a couple of governorates so far. But thank God that this grant is given to us, and we have to have a road plan, as I mentioned, to see the items to be spent on. And first of all, our most important investment is the human being. So let us concentrate on the human being, encourage and push forward those who have good things. Some people in the past, they used to call it in psychology individual differences. Individual differences. However, now they call it the differences in abilities, or ability differences.
Yes.
We know about the dumb and blind, deaf and blind people or students.
Yes.
Some of them are tops,
Yes.
and they have extremely wonderful miracles they can get. We have to get such young people and direct them on the correct path. If we have a plan to how to spend this budget that came from heaven, I call it,
Yes.
we have to prove that we are honest enough not to waste it haphazardly or foolishly or carelessly. No, they have to be on the right path.
Yes. Well, actually, the government has taken it upon itself over the past few years and dedicated years and projects and a lot of financing for people with special needs and certain abilities. And also there's a new presidential initiative which is called Shuf Benafsak Sifi Yourself, which is an initiative that the president has launched to get students and university students to go, for instance, to the new administrative capital, see the universities there, the projects that are being implemented, really to have a well-educated sort of eyewitness account of the developments taking place there, which will in turn work on the sense of patriotism that people need to know, that would, even if you go as a scholar or as a postgraduate and travel the world and maybe assume leading positions there, that as yourself should come back to Egypt and work and give back to the country that really worked on that, and in a way to maintain the sort of competitiveness or the edge that Egyptian universities and projects have. How important would such an initiative be for Egyptians in general and students in particular?
This initiative, I say, must, 100% a must, to be empowered and enforced everywhere with, which is most important, a follow-up plan to see how everything is going on. And we have the model that the political leadership, I mean the president himself, is the only employee who works on Fridays. And he goes and checks everything by himself. We can have him as a leader. And if all the people in the cabinet do this, I think it would be much, much better. As I said, sincerity, honesty, hard work, imitating the good things, avoiding the drawbacks and the defeatists, because I'm afraid so many of things. Do not think, for instance, of the highways and the roads, the overpasses, the bridges, the widening of the Suez Canal, and they say, what are all this about? Is this going to let us have food? They don't know that I once had, when I was a student, an essay entitled, Good Roads Lead to Civilization. So if we implement such an idea through the media and through the awareness I mentioned, awareness is the key magic word for solution of so many things. If we have good awareness and we have goodwill, and when there is a will, there is a way.
Yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard it from Dr. Ged, a lot of efforts have been exerted and still a lot more need to be exerted. A lot of challenges need to be overcome. It's not all rosy and dandy, but still we are on a right path, but still much more work needs to be done, and hopefully we will be witnessing a lot of progress, especially in the educational and health sectors here in Egypt. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this edition of the Daily Debate. But before we go, I'd like to thank my very distinguished guest, Dr. Nabil Ghed, the educational expert. Dr. Ghed, it was a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine.
Thank you very much, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, please stay tuned for more coming up on Nada International. I'm Hani Saif. Thank you for joining us.